Good morning. Welcome to the forecast discussion for February 13th, 2012. It is 9 a.m. and temperatures are a bit chilly out there, ranging from the mid 20s to the lower 30s. Now, we did have a bit of snow this weekend, about half an inch to as much as 3 inches of snow. And for the most part, that's pretty much it for winter. I'm going to show you why. But we had our little period of winter for basically 2 days. And now we start the moderation trend, which I am confident many of you are going to enjoy, unless, of course, you love winter storms. Now, when we take a look at the radar, you can see that we have dry conditions over the northern mid-Atlantic. The Philadelphia and New York City metropolitan area will have no threat for rainfall as we have clear skies throughout the entire region. But our next storm is already starting to develop in the Mississippi River Valley. And this storm is going to lift up towards the Great Lakes, and that means we're going to be dealing with rain, no snow whatsoever, for our next storm late tomorrow night on through Thursday. Taking a look at the latest infrared satellite picture, you can see our high pressure system is currently over the Tennessee River Valley and southeast is going to slide to the east and produce a nice westerly wind anywhere from 5 to 15 miles per hour, at times gusting to 25, maybe even 30 miles per hour. But I think for the most part, we'll be dealing with winds in that 5 to 15 mile per hour range, with temperatures rebounding very nicely into the lower to mid 40s for most locations, upper 30s where we had a little bit more snowfall, usually our interior locations and a few valley locations that can hold on to that cold air a little bit more. But notice the cloud pattern here in the plains and in the Mississippi River Valley. Notice how these clouds are lifting northeast towards the Great Lakes. That's because we really are losing our blocking mechanism in the Canadian Maritimes. So as a result, these storms can lift northeast and then move towards the St. Lawrence River Valley rather than towards the east coast. So as a result, we end up with warm air surging out ahead of these low pressure systems, and we end up with just a rain event rather than any type of frozen precipitation. I know there was talk this weekend at some other sources of a potential winter storm for about the 17th of this month, which is about 4 days from now. There is no threat. It can't be a threat because the weather pattern that has unfolded and developed over the Pacific and now influencing the rest of North America simply will not allow it. It's the same thing with the potential storm for this past weekend, and why I was so gung-ho in saying there was not going to be a major snowfall. If you don't have the weather pattern to support it, it doesn't matter what model guidance you're looking at, you're still going to end up with the same result, which is no major winter storms. So when we take a look at the model guidance, using the European model guidance from the Penn State Wall, a wonderful weather source for all your model guidance needs and also observations. You can see by this evening our high pressure system has redeveloped and shifted off of the coast. We end up with a southwesterly wind by this evening and temperatures falling down into the mid to upper 20s, possibly lower 30s along the coast, but it won't feel as bad. It won't feel as cold as what it is this morning. And you can see our upper level block here that has set up around the Canadian Maritimes is already starting to lose its influence and its effect. By tomorrow evening, that upper level low is now lifting up towards Greenland, and now we move away from a negative NAO pattern to a neutral, possibly even positive NAO pattern, which basically means in layman terms that storms can cut up towards the St. Lawrence River Valley and the eastern Great Lakes rather than being forced over the east coast. So we end up with a low pressure system tracking towards the St. Lawrence River Valley and rainfall approaching in the form of scattered showers by tomorrow evening, by more like tomorrow night. And then as we move forward in time for the rest of this week, notice how our pattern is developing. We have a storm in the Gulf of Alaska. We have a trough in the west coast. So you end up with this pattern where you get a trough in the west and a ridge in the east. Now, we're still going to be under a threat for scattered showers on both Wednesday and into Thursday, moving forward a little bit in time here. You can see that this storm is going to be cutting up towards the eastern Great Lakes. So we end up with these disturbances with a threat of scattered showers, temperatures moderating nicely into the mid 40s to lower 50s for highs, Lows are still going to range from the upper 20s to mid 30s. But the main point here is that any threat for any precipitation is going to fall in the form of liquid, in other words, rain. And we're going to end up with a rather mild pattern because we don't have any of the mechanisms to support a cold or stormy February pattern that some were advertising. So you end up with this progressive pattern, and you know it's progressive because you have all these storms in the Pacific right here. So we got 1, we have 2, we have 3, and they're all moving from west to east at a nice clip. Now, by this weekend, we start to get a little bit of a change here. We get one cold front that finally moves through, some polar air invades, and we fall back to near normal temperature levels in the upper 30s to mid 40s, which is typical for this time of year. But notice the key factor here. In the Pacific, we still continue with this progressive pattern. So yes, we have cold air come in, but as you can see, warm air is already returning, and you can see that our high pressure system that brings us the cold air is already starting to shift towards the East Coast, which means that yes, this weekend will be a little bit chilly, it will be dry, but those chilly conditions will not last long, and mild conditions will return by next week, with temperatures returning into the 50s once again. That is your forecast discussion for today. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. For all your weather needs, visit nynjpaweather.com and nynjpaweather on Twitter and Facebook. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe out there.